Okay, thanks so much, guys. But basically, you can be, turned over to the Office of the Inspector General, or you can be turned over to the National Supplier Clearinghouse for possible, sanctions, or maybe they will, take away your billing privileges. It just really depends. So always, always respond to a letter for additional documentation. You can get documentation requests from your DME MAC, but you can also get them from the real audit contractors, such as the RACs or the ZPICs. And each one of them has a different time frame. For example, a ZPIC has a 30-day requirement. So always check the letter that you receive just to make sure that you respond timely. One thing you don't want to do, especially with a ZPIC or a RAC, you don't want to miss that time frame because they may come knocking on your door. So just wanted a few tips on how to respond to an ADR letter, and I'll show you a sample of how one should be put together. And it's pretty clean and clear if you kind of understand how the reviewers are actually looking at your documents. But basically, you want to arrange the documents in the order that they're listed on the letter. Normally, there's going to be a logical sequence. For example, it's going to be the detailed written order, and then the statement of certifying physician, and then the medical records. On the detailed written order and the medical records, it's really best not to write anything on there. I had a question earlier today as far as, is it okay to put like a little star or a little arrow? It's okay if you want to point out the section that, highlights, let's say the foot exam. But for the most part, they don't want you to note anything just because of the, CMS has a suspicious nature. And so they're going to think that you're trying to either alter the documents or draw their attention to something that's really not there. So it's really in the best interest just not to do anything. And as far as highlighters, those will come off black. So even if you use like a yellow highlighter, when it's scanned through the CMS process, it's going to come out black. So basically what you're doing is you're actually destroying any documentation that you're sending over. Check all your signatures before you send the documents over. We had talked about last time as far as your detailed written orders. Basically what you don't want to do is you don't want to send an order over that's wrong, because basically an order you can't correct with an attestation. So basically it's going to be dead in the water. Between each document, make sure you put a descriptive cover page, and we're going to show you an example of how they would like it written. And on this descriptive cover page, that's where you want to put your reference to a section within that document that's following, not on the document itself. Okay. You don't want to send any documents that's not on the list. You don't want to give them any ammunition to come back and deny something else. You don't want to send in multiple dates of medical records. For example, a lot of people do send in them. They may get like maybe a year or maybe a year and a half of medical records from the certifying physician. However, the only thing that's relevant is the last 6 months. So you really don't want to confuse the issue, and you actually don't want to confuse the reviewers. When you mail or fax the ADRs, you want to fax each one separately. You don't want to mail them inside one package, and you don't want to use staples, paper clips, or rubber bands, because basically they go into a holding block and they go into a production scanning, and that could be the reason that a lot of us get denials for no documentation on file, is because they're not going to take the time to unstaple it or undo the paper clip or undo the rubber band. They're just going to send it through the system. The first page of the ADR, which is this, with the scanner icon down on the lower right, that's what you want to put on top of your package. So if you're mailing it, that's going to be the first page that they see. And then if you're faxing it, you're going to have your cover sheet and then your ADR first page right after that. Okay. So all these templates, I have actually created all the templates that we will load onto the footnet for you. So all of these you can just basically pick up and use as templates, but I just wanted to show you what the templates would look like. So you're going to have your first page of your response. Your second page is actually going to be a warm and fuzzy cover letter with all the pertinent information and all the documents listed in order. And then you're going to have your descriptive cover sheets in between each set of documents. And I've written it so that it's basically in the order that they like, the detailed written order. This is what they call it. I put the title that we use on our actual document so they can compare. So each document has a cover page showing them exactly what that document is. 3 and 4, 99% of the time, it's going to be the main medical notes. It could be separate. These may be separate, so you can always separate them. A good example here would be is if the evaluation for the diabetic condition is by the certifying physician, and then the medical notes regarding the qualifying condition is from the podiatrist. So basically that means that this would be separate, okay? But for the most part, it's going to be the same. And then your supplier in-person evaluation, your proof of delivery form, and I've included the remaining items on their list, which is other pertinent records, and also the ABN on file. You don't need to include these pages if you do not use them, okay? So basically, this is the format that's set up that is requested by CMS. So after you submit your ADR, within 30 days, 60 days, what will happen is you'll get a remittance advice advising you of what that decision was. And in the event that there is a denial and you need to file a redetermination, there are really two excellent sources to get the exact reasons from the reviewer why that ADR was denied. And most of us are in the jurisdiction of CGS, and so you would have the medical review wizard, and it's very simple. You basically can go in, enter your claim control number, hit submit, and it actually comes up with a list of denials as put in by the reviewer. And these are the reasons that you will use in filing your appeal. For those of us that are in Noridian, you can use Endeavor. And you basically can do the same thing, enter in your provider information and the CCN number, and then it will give you the reasons for denial. And this is actually excellent because that way you can go ahead and respond to the ADR denial using the redetermination. I wanted to show you, because basically we had talked about last time, when we get our error rate ratio, and this is the reason why we want to submit our additional documentation request very cleanly and basically just use the format as they would like it, because that way that will help reduce the denials. However, this is just an exact letter that there was one facility that we did reach out and we did get an exclusion for 12 months. And this is from CGS. I also have one from Noridian. But basically, if you have an error rate below 20% based upon individual HCPCS review, you basically can ask to be excluded from prepayment reviews. And we can go through each facility and we can address those one by one. There are simple ways to go ahead and address a claims denial if it really doesn't involve the actual documentation. But if it's a simple mathematical error, or maybe it's just a error, clerical error, you basically can almost call the DME MAC and you can request what they call a reopening. And you can do this over the phone with a representative, or you can do it by fax or a written request. And this way, for example, let's say you use the wrong units on the HCPCS code and you put 1 instead of 2, and they denied it and said, well, that's not usual or customary. If it's just a correction, you can call them up and say, listen, I made a mistake. How about if we change it to 2? And normally they will go ahead and do that and reprocess the claim. And that'll save a lot of time rather than going up through the appeal process. There's 2 documents that you can use, and these will be loaded on the Infonet as well. There's a reopening checklist. This is for CGS. And this one is for Noridian. And it gives the information that you need to provide and also the vehicles available to you to do a reopening. So you can do a reopening by telephone, you can do it by fax, you can do it in writing, and for both Noridian and CGS, you can file a reopening electronically. And this is just an example. If you wanted to do it in writing, this is a sample of the reopening request form. And I'll make this available to everyone on the new Infonet. So what if we do get a denial and we want to proceed with the appeal process? Okay. A lot of us, I've noticed a lot of the things that we get denied on really don't seem to be right. And a lot of times it really seems to be an error on the part of the DME MAC. The biggest one is they come back to us and say, those documents were not included, even though you faxed these over. And a lot of this has to do with the process in which they do scan and receive these documents. For example, I really think that they do lose them, or the pages may stick together, or the reviewer actually does just miss these, which is a reason why you're going to be using the descriptive cover pages when you submit that, additional documentation requests. A couple other errors which don't seem to make sense are, they tell you the prescription is not current when it actually is, and when you use a A5513 for your customs, and they come back and tell you, well, that really should be coded A5512, and you know well that on PDAC or through the manufacturer that it really is coded A5513. So I really not really sure about why the reason for that, but it's something that we just have to submit a redetermination, and that's why using the MR Wizard or the Endeavor to find out the exact reasons for the denials is great, because that way you can address them specifically. So today I just wanted to go over the first two levels, which is probably the most important to us. That's going to be the redetermination. The second is going to be the reconsideration. The third, which is the administrative law judge, right at the moment it stands about 24 to 28 months. So basically, if we can focus and get our efforts right at the first two levels, we basically can save ourselves a lot of headache and a lot of time. So a couple of things about, tips on submitting a successful redetermination. Okay, you need to submit all your documents to substantiate your argument on the first level of appeal. What will happen is that at the second level, the QIC may take their documentation from the first level, and if there is a denial at the second level, then unless you can prove good cause for submitting additional documentation for the administrative law judge, you can't submit any further documentation. So unless you have good evidence for the judge to consider. So basically, you need to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row when you submit that first level of appeal. When you submit your documentation for your patient file, you do have to submit the entire patient file, not just the documentation in question. For example, let's say they said that there was no medical notes attached. Well, not only do you submit the medical notes, but you do need to submit the detailed written order and the statement of certifying physician and the proof of delivery. So you just need to send your complete documentation in, and there is a reason for that. For the most part, you're going to be using the same format as the additional documentation request, but also you're also going to submit your arguments for the denial. Okay. With a redetermination, you can fax, mail, or file electronically with your DME MAC. For CGS, what they have said as far as January, that basically they cannot accept faxed redeterminations. So from here on in, we're going to have to mail or file electronically with CGS. As far as I know, Noridian, you can still fax. But here is basically what a fax I'm sorry, not a fax, but a redetermination, what it basically should look at. And it basically is very simple. You have your redetermination form, and make sure, because this is an automatic dismissal, make sure you sign the redetermination form. Whoever is submitting the request, make sure that you put in down here reasons for your argument. Normally what I do is, and this is based upon what CMS has told us, is I put a short synopsis here, and then I say, see attached reasons for disagreement with the decision. And then I have a short page with the reasons that they gave for denial, and then my rebuttal to those reasons. Okay. For example, number 2, it says medical records did not include the evaluation. And I put exactly, the medical notes did do the evaluation. This is what it said. And this is where in the document those records are found. Okay. And this is how Medicare has said they want to see that, as opposed to actually writing on the medical records themselves. This actually makes it really easy for the reviewers. And you want to include a copy of the electronic or paper remittance advice of the initial determination. We use electronic remittance advice, so I've included that here. And then my evidence page, my fax confirmation sheet. Since they said they didn't get any records, I wanted to prove to them that I did fax over 24 pages, and it confirmed that they received 24 pages. And this is just the example of the fax cover sheet. And then I start off by listing all the documents, the detailed written order, the statement of certifying physician, and the medical notes. And here again, you want to write exactly what your rebuttal is on the descriptive cover page. The evaluation of the patient's diabetic condition and the examination of the foot is located on page 1 under the heading wound check. And this is the sample that I use. This is an actual redetermination that we filed. And if you can see under wound check on page 1, that's where it listed the foot evaluation and the condition right here. And you don't want to write into the margins. You don't want to put any little stars, or you definitely don't want to circle or highlight. And then we continue with the supplier in-person evaluation. You do want to include the scans, or if you did do a custom, whatever description of the method you use to get a capture of the positive model of the foot, the proof of delivery with a product description. And this is great, for example, when they come back to you and they say, well, this is really not a A5513, this is a A5512, then you can just provide them the product sheet and the coding that it was approved under, which is A5513. I included the descriptive cover sheets for the ABN. If you didn't use an ABN, you definitely don't have to include it in the package. It's just there for times when you do have to use it. And so that's basically a redetermination package. Are there any questions at this point? I know I'm going kind of pretty fast to cover everything, but I don't want to miss any questions at this point. Everybody okay? So the next level is basically going to be the reconsideration. And a reconsideration is not with your DME MAC, but it is with a independent contractor which is hired by your DME MAC. And basically their incentive is to deny because that's how they're paid. For CGS and for Noridian, we use C2C. And this is the main reason that you want to make sure that you supply all the documentations to your DME MAC on the first level, because your QIC, which is your Quality Independent Contractor, is going to pull those documents if they need to, so that they can review them for the second level. But the recommendations are that, for the most part, you want to create and you want to send your own package, because you don't want to rely on any documentation that the DME MAC has or maybe they don't have. For example, if the QIC pulls their documentation from the DME MAC and the DME MAC doesn't have the medical records, well, you're setting yourself up for another denial, because you're going to have the same denial come back from the second level. So you really want to make sure that you submit your entire package all over again. And so just like the redetermination level, this is basically the sample package and the template that you can use to file your first level of appeal. You know, you're going to have your form, and which of course you need to sign. And then this actually should say reconsideration up here. Oh, my apologies. But this is the denial that we received from the redetermination. And so basically this is the evidence page that I wanted to put in here. And then you want to put in the redetermination notice, the initial notice that they told you that redetermination was denied, and this is basically what it looks like. And you want to make sure that you do put that in front of your package. And so since this reason was basically the same as everything else, I put in the fax cover sheet and the detailed written order, the statement of certifying physician, the medical notes with an explanation of where that information is found, the supplier in-person evaluation, the proof of delivery form, and the advanced beneficiary notice. Of course, here again, if you didn't use it, you don't have to include it into the package. Okay. Okay. So basically, that is just an overview of, you know, the practical aspects of how to file a correct additional documentation request or an appeal in the eyes of Medicare. And so I'm going to open it up to any questions. I will have these documents loaded so that you can use these templates. And, you know, feel free to actually give me a call at any time. And just, you know, if you need any help, I'll be more than happy to help with you. Anyway, any questions? Okay.
Hi, this is Ed from Stockton. How are you?
I'm fine, Ed. How are you?
I'm doing good. Hey, this is a question actually going back to the previous calls. And I'm wondering, are we going to be able to get Spanish versions of some of the documents for the patient guide? We deal with a lot of Spanish speakers here in Stockton, specifically with our Kaiser patients. Kaiser has a language policy where we can get interpreters on, but the documentation that we have needs to also be in Spanish.
Exactly. I mean, that's actually a good request, Ed. I think it's something that I can look into and see if we can get that done. So at this point, I'm going to say, let's see if I can get that done for us.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for being on the webinar today. I am going to record it, and you can also re-review it on the Infonet. And like I said, if you have any further questions, just give me a holler. Take care.
Thank you. Please stand by.